want to talk about Whoopi Goldberg because I got so many texts this week because she attacked me the week before.
Yeah, sure.
So everybody was like, oh, Bill, I get you're enjoying the karma. First of all, I'm going to talk about this at the end of my show next week, teaser. But there is no thing as karma, okay? Get over that. Whoopi attacks me on a regular basis. She says stupid on a regular basis. It just happened to coincide.
Sausage maker Johnsonville is recalling more than 42,000 pounds of pork sausage for possible contamination with plastic fibers. Fortunately, authorities were able to track all 42,000 pounds to a single location in New York City.
The Queen of the View spiraled into full emotional DEFCON after a roast so savage it might go down in history. Buckle up, because Whoopi Goldberg's dignity wasn't the only thing that exited stage left. And no, it wasn't a lukewarm cup of coffee that triggered the meltdown of the century. This was bigger. In a tag team takedown nobody saw coming, Bill Maher and Greg Gutfeld roasted Whoopi so mercilessly that even her Oscar looked ready to file a restraining order. Grab the popcorn. This wasn't just a roast, it was a cultural event.
So cute when one of their side gets punished. They sulk like they ran out of raw cookie dough in the green room. Yeah, ABC suspended Whoopi for 2 weeks because she said the Holocaust had nothing to do with race. She said this on a show called The View, which makes everything about race. Except now.
The Holocaust isn't about race. No. It's not about race.
It is.
No, it's about
race.
But it's not about race. It's not about race.
What is it about?
Because it's about man's inhumanity to man.
Yes, that's heroic.
Whoopi Goldberg, the longtime anchor of The View, has built her reputation as the unshakable voice of reason in a show known for fiery debates, sarcastic jabs, and no-holds-barred opinions. But recently, the image she's carefully curated took a major hit. In a twist no one saw coming, the self-proclaimed queen of daytime TV found herself at the center of controversy, not as the wise mediator, but as the one dishing out the verbal blows. What was supposed to be business as usual turned into a moment that may have cracked the foundation of her composed persona.
Privilege, Whoopi hangs on, which is fine since she apologized, but not before digging an even deeper hole than the one in her head.
And finally, new rule, stop saying that Whoopi Goldberg getting yanked from The View right after she attacked me on The View is karma. There's no such thing as karma, sorry. Sorry, but life is random. The only word to describe it when a big game hunter gets trampled by an elephant and then eaten by lions is hilarious.
Let's start at the beginning. Whoopi made the fatal mistake of doing what she does best, opening her mouth and delivering a take so absurd it practically begged to be roasted. For years, she's used her platform to unleash a steady stream of opinions ranging from mildly questionable to downright cringeworthy. So no, this wasn't her first trip into absurdity, but this time she took it a step too far. In a move that felt more tone-deaf than thought-provoking, Whoopi launched into a lecture on free speech and political correctness, essentially telling people to get over their own problems and move on. Bold strategy, and not in a good way.
Them that not everyone on that platform or who consumes stuff on that platform enjoys. And The View is a particularly weird place to do a cancellation.
It's called The View?
It's called The View. It's not called The Fact.
Yeah, but isn't it interesting that it's called, I don't think they meant this when Barbara Walters invented it a long time ago, but it's The View.
Well,
that's the problem in America. There is one view.
Right, and
one
that's clearly actually
true opinion, and everybody else can go sit in the corner.
In that moment, Whoopi handed Greg Gutfeld and Bill Maher the perfect setup for a devastating 1-2 punch, leaving her scrambling for cover and clinging to whatever dignity she had left. The real issue? Half the audience was already silently pleading, "Just one day without another lecture on what's wrong with America, please." So when Whoopi, in her signature "I'm above this liberal smugness," decided to sermonize once again, the backlash was inevitable. If you're going to preach to an audience tuning in for something even remotely insightful, expect more eye rolls than applause when all you deliver is condescension.
Yesterday on The View, otherwise known as Hell's DMV, Whoopi Goldberg asked how much different are the values of the Trump administration from the Taliban.
We have a leader who has repeatedly demeaned women, right? Wants to defund organizations that benefit women, calling on the media to shut up, specifically wants to give preferential treatment based on religion. Are these values really much different than the Taliban?
Talk about groundbreaking to actually hear a celebrity say something mean about the Taliban. How dare they compare them to Trump? The Taliban should sue. Guess they ran out of Hitler analogies. So as they bash the president, I'm reminded how entertainers rarely express any rage over any strand of misogynist Islamism. If they did, we might take their rage toward Trump seriously. A reminder, the Taliban throw acid in girls' faces for going to school. Yeah, I guess that's like defunding Planned Parenthood.
Blissfully unaware, or perhaps just indifferent, to the fact that her audience might not be in the mood for yet another crash course in progressive politics, Whoopi launched into one of her trademark truth bombs. Big mistake. Enter Bill Maher, the HBO host known for dismantling half-baked opinions with deadpan precision. Few people can call you out as brutally and effortlessly as Maher. He's turned puncturing liberal self-importance into an art form. And nothing excites him more than reminding the world that stupidity isn't limited to one side of the aisle. The moment he caught wind of Whoopi's self-righteous monologue, he sharpened his sarcasm like a blade and came swinging. Maher, the guy who lives by the mantra, "Let's offend everyone and see what sticks," wasn't about to let this one slide. In a world oversaturated with outrage, he's too busy championing a version of liberalism that's built on brutal honesty and unapologetic defiance of political correctness. And as far as he's concerned, playing the moral compass on national television while drowning in hypocrisy is the ultimate sin, and Whoopi just rang every alarm.
I'm old enough to remember when it was the conservatives who hated the Jews.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bill Maher, who has been the standard bearer for liberalism, and in many ways leftism until the woke went bananas in this last decade, but for decades, that's what this guy has represented in America. I want you to note tone they all talk with him. I want you to look at Sonny Huston's body language and the way they look at him and everything else, just because he is a lefty who hasn't gone for it.
With a smug grin, Bill Maher came armed with his own version of the truth, and he didn't stop at just one jab. Why throw a single punch when you can deliver a full-on intellectual beatdown? Maher took Whoopi's liberal talking points and carved them up with surgical precision, wielding his sarcasm like a scalpel. For every excuse she offered, he had a sharper, smarter rebuttal. This wasn't finger-pointing, it was a verbal demolition. By the end, Whoopi looked less like a seasoned pundit and more like a stunned deer in the headlights, leaving viewers wondering how she hadn't spontaneously combusted from sheer embarrassment. But wait, it got even worse. Enter Greg Gutfeld, Fox News' resident class clown and unapologetic wrecking ball. Armed with snarky one-liners, ruthless mockery, and zero concern for anyone's feelings, Gutfeld doesn't just roast, he incinerates. If Maher is the intellectual bruiser, Gutfeld is the comic assassin, always ready to turn your worst take into a punchline. It doesn't matter if you're a saint or a train wreck. If you say something foolish on TV, Gutfeld will be there, gleefully dragging your reputation through the mud with a smirk and a mic drop.
By the way, out there, that hat that you keep wearing, that red hat that says "Make America Great Again," that tells people that you go along with this. So you might just put a swastika on the hat.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
Because we see it anyway.
I'm not going to defend Donald Trump ever, but I would never say that we should put the swastika on the cap, because I think you can hate Donald Trump. You can't hate everybody who likes him. It's half the country. I don't want to live in that country. I don't want to live in the country where I hate half the country, and I don't hate half the country.
Oh, geez, it's a great...
Creating The View's latest viral moment, Greg Gutfeld didn't just respond to Whoopi, he turned her into a living, breathing punchline. The true brilliance of Gutfeld isn't in debate or policy breakdowns. It's in his nightly monologue, where he skewers nonsense with the glee of a man who knows memes are mightier than manifestos. His eyes lit up with that familiar mischievous glint, and instead of arguing with Whoopi, he turned her into a cartoon character, loud, exaggerated, and easy to mock. While Bill Maher dissects arguments with a scalpel, Gutfeld prefers a blowtorch. Mockery is his mother tongue, and he speaks it fluently. He didn't need a fact check. He just needed her own words. Let's face it, Whoopi practically walked onto the set with a roast me sign taped to her back. Liberal cliches? Please. Gutfeld eats those for breakfast and still has room for dessert. But this went beyond rebuttal. He didn't just challenge her, he embarrassed her. He looked at her like she was a walking punchline. And for someone who sees herself as the morals compass of daytime TV, getting clowned by the king of clowning is the ultimate career cringe. By the time social media lit up with memes and hot takes, it wasn't just a roast, it was a full-blown cultural takedown. The audience didn't just see it coming, they were practically counting down to impact.
Their brains are small. But who's the dumbest one of all? True, none of them are in Mensa, but who's the most densa? Perhaps it's Sonny who mastered the art of making idiots look smart. Now The View could ask a mirror who's the dumbest one of all, but there's no way that glass does.
Who could really blame Whoopi for slipping into full meltdown mode? After all, she was getting publicly roasted by two men who've practically built their careers on mockery, and she's been the face of daytime TV for decades. Cue the defensive rambling, the exaggerated eye rolls, and the desperate scramble to save face. There was no graceful exit, no clever comeback, just the unmistakable look of someone realizing they walked into a fire without a fireproof suit. Sure, Whoopi's spent years dominating televised debates with that signature air of detached authority, but this time, the formula failed. Her usual tactic, looking unbothered and above the fray, landed flat. The cracks were showing, and as the roast snowballed into a cultural event, it became painfully clear. She hadn't prepared for this kind of takedown. Not from Maher, not from Gutfeld, and definitely not in front of an audience hungry for blood and punchlines. But zoom out a little, and the real show begins. This wasn't just a TV spat. It was an epic clash of comedy, politics, and ego. On one side, Bill Maher, the old-school liberal turned political provocateur, calling out the absurdities of modern wokeness. On the other, Whoopi Goldberg, entrenched in progressive orthodoxy, preaching the gospel of political correctness and kindness. The irony? Delicious. The collision? Explosive. What looked like a messy panel moment was actually a full-blown ideological throwdown, with Whoopi caught in the crossfire of a roast she never saw coming.
Those hens are always plucking. They get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, and then I get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, except on purpose. But every now and then, one of those dingbats inadvertently says something that reveals modern liberal thought so perfectly it deserves further study. You know, like a weird serpent that washed up on the beach and you want to poke it with it.
And then, for that final zing, enters Greg Gutfeld, the Fox News court jester turned cultural hitman, who's built an entire career mocking the absurdities of the left with a smirk and a punchline. Think of it as the ideological version of a street fight. Fewer bruises, more sarcasm, and a whole lot of bruised egos. What's fascinating is how even the realm of entertainment has become a battlefield, with tribal lines drawn in bold red and blue. Gutfeld, playing the smug general of the Fox News army, fires off satire like it's ammo. Maher, who seems nostalgic, for the days when you could tell a joke and light a cigarette without sparking a Twitter firestorm, fights from a different flank, but he's still in the war. And then there's Whoopi, clinging to a version of liberalism frozen in the 90s, oblivious to the fact that the battlefield has moved on without her. It was more than just a roast. It was a televised ideological skirmish, and poor Whoopi didn't get the memo. What used to pass as wisdom now sounds like worn-out talking points echoing off the studio walls. As this clash unfolded in real time, something bigger became clear. Audiences are done with echo chambers. They're tired of monologues disguised as conversation. They want debate with bite, not sermons with applause signs. They want politics mixed with humor, criticism with substance, not just another bowl of agree with me or you're canceled. While Whoopi lounges comfortably in her self-made echo chamber, convinced she's the steady voice of reason, Maher and Gutfeld are giving viewers what they actually want: friction, unpredictability, and, most importantly, a real conversation.
Happy Wednesday, everyone. Well, not if you're Whoopi Goldberg, a.k.a. Karen Johnson. Yeah, who knew Whoopi was a Karen? thought that was only for white people, like Toyota Priuses and...
Maher's core message is simple. Yes, I'm a liberal, but this is getting ridiculous. And that's where things get really interesting. Gutfeld, with his relentless knack for turning every liberal talking point into a punchline, joins the fray not as an outsider, but as a necessary counterweight. What makes it even more delicious is that The View has morphed into a symbol of ideological insulation, a place where critique goes to die and applause lines drown out actual debate. You'd think Maher and Gutfeld would be the outcasts in this dynamic, the class clowns everyone ignores. But no, they're winning. They've become the cool kids at the political lunch table, the ones who don't just roll their eyes at nonsense but challenge it, even when it comes from their own side.